To order. Welcome everybody to the regular meeting of Council for Monday, May 14th, 7 p.m. in City Hall Council Chambers. I'd like to acknowledge that the meeting is being conducted on the unceded territory, traditional territory of the Hupetchesset and Sishot First Nations. Councillors, are there any late items? City Clerk, any late items?
One, Mr. Mayor, item E2, correspondence from the owner of the Arrowview Hotel.
Okay, thank you. We will include it in the agenda. A motion to adopt the agenda as amended.
I'll make that motion, Mr. Mayor.
Second, Mr. Mayor.
All those in favor?
In favor.
Carried. And this little voice in the background is from Councillor Alberni, who is participating via telephone. He can't be here this evening. Welcome, Councillor Alberni. Is it just as warm in Whistler as it is in Port Alberni? We're about 30 degrees here today.
It is, but I think my head is burning faster. There's less air up here.
Put a hat on. Okay. Council, we have minutes in front of us, a motion to adopt the minutes as provided.
I'll make that motion, Mr. Mayor.
Second, Mr. Mayor.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Favor.
It's unanimous. Carried. Thank you. Brings us, Council, to our public input period. It's an opportunity for public to address Council on topics of relevance to City Council. Maximum of 4 speakers for no more than 3 minutes each can be accommodated. Anybody wish to address Council? Okay. Mr. Maba, I saw your hand go up first.
Well, Kevin was here first. No, it's okay. Okay, thanks.
He may have been here first, but I saw your hand first.
Okay. Thank you, Mayor and Council. John Maba, I'm speaking on behalf of Cycle Alberni and Alberni Valley Transition Towns. And I'd like to speak to you tonight about the benefits of regular exercise and your health, personal health. So the Center of, as well as Bike to Work Week, of course, the Center of Disease Control says that there's a number of benefits from regular exercise, including weight loss and weight control, risk of heart disease and stroke, high blood pressure, type 2 diabetes. It strengthens bones and muscles, and it lessens the risk of a number of different types of cancers, and it helps with our people who have arthritis. It also improves mental health and mood, and one of the big ones that's coming out is that it seems to be able to combat dementia, which is something that as we get older we think about more. It improves our ability to do daily activities and to prevent falls, and it increases the chances of living longer with as little as 150 minutes a week of moderate exercise. So Bike to Work Week is simply an opportunity to encourage people in our community to get out and exercise, specifically on bicycles. And the Bike to Work Week this year is from May the 28th to June the 3rd. There are a number of activities all through the week. On Monday there's going to be a pancake breakfast at Aussie's from 7 to 9. On Tuesday from 4 to 6, from 7 to 9, and also from 4 to 6 at Steampunk's coffee shop. There'll be an activity there. At the Barclay on Wednesday from 4 to 6. Thursday, Buy Low Foods from 7 to 9 in the morning. Friday, Victoria Quay from 4 to 6. We're going to have yoga for cyclists. So you don't even need to bring a mat. Just come and see what's going on. I think it's going to be very interesting. And on Saturday, we're going to have our finale event, which will start out at Echo Centre with a bike parade, and then down to Harbour Quay for a barbecue and a live band, which that all starts at the Echo Centre at 2 and Harbour Quay at 3. So I'd like to encourage at your next council, Mayor and Council, to ride your bikes to the meeting. It's an opportunity for all of us to encourage the community to get out and participate. And also, I'd like you to think about starting a team of city staff and councillor and mayors, because there's a number of teams around town. Just a kind of a way of encouraging everybody to get out. So, thank you very much.
Your time's up, Mr.
Yeah.
Mayor. Thank you very much.
It's great. I hope it's nothing serious. Yeah. Anyway, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Don't take more than 3 minutes.
Yeah, I'm getting the bell coming.
Okay.
Hello, my name is Kevin Wright from Uptown Merchants Association. Thank you, Mayor and Council, for receiving me. As someone committed to business growth and innovation in our city, I have been requested to come forward and speak on behalf of investors looking to build a new manufacturing facility in Port Alberni. Monsieur Pierre and Madame Chabot of Courchevel, France, have purchased a home in the community and have fallen very much in love with the valley and very much in love with the people who live here. They would like to invest $1 million in the business to help build the economy of Port Alberni and establish a Canadian subsidiary to their existing custom wood manufacturing facility they currently own in Europe. My understanding is that they would like to build a state-of-the-art, ecologically minded, European-style mill to produce value-added glulam beams and high-end plywood. They are also proposing expanding into custom millwork and high-end decorative wood product for the near future. The facility would be built to the highest standards for the quality and minimal environmental impact to be totally enclosed. The total decibel level inside the facility would not exceed 90 decibels inside of the building, and the facility would be heavily insulated as climate control, temperature, and humidity is paramount to making the high-quality product they are famous for in Europe. This insulation not only will ensure the exceptional product for the noise, but for the noise levels outside of the building would be far lower at a distance of 100 feet or more. It is my understanding that Monsieur Pierre was escorted around the valley on his search for the ideal space by Councillor Sauvé and EDO Pat Deacon. Councillor Sauvé was kind enough to be a translator for Monsieur Pierre and by all accounts was very helpful. Monsieur Pierre continued correspondence with Mr. Deacon in the city and tried to work with them to find a way to invest over the last 6 months. They made an initial request to purchase Lot 13 on Ships Creek Road, as they felt it would be ideal to allow them to establish and have room to expand. The city, however, has been on more than one occasion has encouraged them to invest in buying existing mills and simply retrofit to suit their needs. The couple feels that the upfront cost and cleanup would be far too costly and require them to literally work backwards and start from the start. The insistence by the city to encourage them to invest in an existing mill is still currently the position that the city holds as far as Mr. Pierre is concerned. It is my understanding that the lot that they would like to build on is city property, and they have made an offer to purchase the land at fair market value. The land in question has been part of the city since 1892 and has been set aside at this point for future use for over a century. I would like to argue that 125 years sitting vacant is long enough to consider that this business venture is future use. I am personally very interested in this proposal as it fulfills the ever-present Alberni Valley dream of building a value-added mill that would be able to afford to buy and purchase raw logs that are currently leaving the valley, and to return much-desired good-paying jobs and promise of more jobs in the near future. I have been asked to step forward as Monsieur Pierre feels frustrated at the lack of progress and is considering leaving the community and looking elsewhere to invest his money. I would like to ask the council to redouble their efforts and ensure that these investors are encouraged to stay and make an ever effort to assist them in their investment. I would also like to offer my assistance to council if I can help in any way to help this couple stay in our community and build jobs. And thank you very much for your time. Thank you.
Thank you for your proposal. Thank you. Okay, council, that brings us, is there anybody else who wishes to address council? Then that brings us to delegations. Council, our next delegation is Mr. Bill Collette from the Alberni Valley Chamber of Commerce. You recovered from the Mad Hatter's Day yet, Mr. Collette?
Yes, thanks very much, and thanks for coming out there. It was nice to see you and your wife there. Mayor and Council, so here speaking on behalf of the Chamber of Commerce with respect to the MRDT, Municipal Regional District Tax. Actually, let's make sure I can move this. Oh, the center one? Okay. And then the right one? Oh, you'll do it? Okay. So I'm not sure if you know, if everybody's familiar with the MRDT, but it is the hotel room tax that's charged in many communities throughout BC and throughout Canada and really throughout North America and probably beyond that. It applies to purchases of accommodation in designated areas of the province. Recently, probably about a year ago or maybe 2 years ago, they changed from a 2% fixed tax rate to an optional 3%, so communities can apply for that. It's currently collected in more than 50 communities. I think it's around 55 or even closer to 60. The tax is voluntary, and it has to be supported by local government and at least 51% of accommodations. That provides 51% of rooms. And I want to just clarify here that I'm not here today to seek council's support for this. I'm not here to get any sort of motion, but more just to present the idea, present where the Chamber of Commerce is. We're working with current hoteliers involved, and maybe even making some progress there. So my presentation here today is just really as an update as to where we're at with this and keep you informed. So again, if I go to the next slide here, so how it works, 2 or 3% is paid by the travelers to the tourism accommodations, and in turn that money is forwarded to the Minister of Finance just like other taxes, and then it's sent back to local government or the organization charged with looking after it. Can we just go back to that? Or? Thank you. So it works its way back to the community very quickly, and then it's moved to either an organization, a DMO, like Destination Marketing Organization, that sort of thing. So like in Tofino, it's Tourism Tofino, and in Oceanside, it's Oceanside Tourism and places like that. And then those monies have to be spent on marketing the community. So that's essentially how the money is moved around. You can see that over the past few years, since 2013, the amount of money collected has grown substantially. It's now approaching $50 million in the province, so that's a fair bit of money going towards marketing various communities. This is the slide that really kind of struck me when this was presented to us at the Chamber of Commerce last November. You can see that, you know, if you go down the list of communities starting in the north, we've got virtually every community on Vancouver Island with 1 or 2 exceptions. And unfortunately, in my opinion, we're standing in one of those exceptions right now. So you can see that we've got Mount Washington, Courtenay, Campbell River, who's now at 3%. Ucluelet, Tofino, Parksville, Qualicum Beach, Nanaimo, Regional District, Cowichan, and communities surrounding Victoria. So Port Alberni is missing, and that's really what has kind of troubled us at the Chamber of Commerce in the last few years. And I should clarify that at the Chamber of Commerce, we're the ones who field the complaints. We hear about this from the community at large, from various different stakeholders as to why aren't we marketing. And I should clarify that we are marketing. There is 4 properties in town today that voluntarily collect 2% fee. And they do, and the key word is voluntarily. They don't have to do it, but they do it. So, you know, talking here today by no means is trying to throw them under the bus, anything but. They do a good job in collecting fees. The problem in our view is that we have probably 19 properties in Port Alberni, and we have many more rooms that aren't contributing to that tax revenue. So that's where we focus our attention on. So again, it's jointly administered by the Minister of Finance, Minister of Jobs, Tourism, Skills Training, and Destination BC. We can just go past that slide. It's pretty much the same thing. This one too, basically it's, the program has grown over the past few years. Port Alberni used to be involved. I'm not quite sure when they got involved, but I think it was around 2010, probably a 2-year contract, and then it wasn't renewed. That's before my time, so when I moved here in 2013, it had already ceased, and the current program was in place at that time. But the program has changed a lot. It's a user-friendly, easy-to-access information. That's one thing that I find important as well, is that we don't have the data available to us in Port Alberni that all those other places have because they collect this tax. We miss out on important data that we could use for marketing and just study purposes. So I think that's something that, you know, is a spin-off effect of collecting that tax. So again, it's you can go to 3%. You can apply at any time. The 2% is pretty much the standard, but I think there's 2 or 3 places on the island collecting 3%. Basically, that's pretty straightforward there. I like the bottom bullet point. That seems kind of interesting. Again, you're talking, you know, provincially there's $50 million being collected, so there's a fair bit of money that can be going to that sort of thing, tourism, events, programming. And as we as a province want to move toward tourism, it's important that we consider it. Thanks, Davina. So the funds must be used to fund tourism marketing. There's been some changes recently. I won't go into that right now, but essentially it's mostly to fund tourism marketing programs, projects, and that sort of thing. And bullet 2, you know, activities should increase local tourism revenues. You know, running the visitor center, being heavily involved in McLean Mill, and just being a local stakeholder, I see the value of us marketing tourism. My cell phone just beeped. I think the Jets just scored, but
We also have 2 minutes left.
oh, okay. Anyway, so that's that particular slide. So it does need an approved bylaw from local government. Again, I'm not looking for that here today. We are working with the local Alberni Valley tourism folks, and I think the door is slightly ajar there, which is good. And so at the Chamber of Commerce, we're going to continue pushing for that and see if we can come up with a plan to get this in place in the near term. That's what we're hoping for right now. So again, really that can just summarize it up. I just wanted to update you on where we're at with the MRDT. Thanks.
Well, Mr. Collette, thank you very much. It's a daunting task, but I wish you every success. I'm sure Council does as well. Council, any questions? Councillor Paulson.
Mr. Collette, I applaud you for trying to resurrect this.
Thanks.
This could be a very good thing for the community, and I sat on AV tourism in, I think, around 2010 to 2012, and I think Mr. McCrur was sitting on that board at the time and probably could give you some insight on what happened inside the room on those meetings. And
Yeah.
I really think it takes somebody who can facilitate and be a communicator, and there were groups involved at that time that didn't see the overall good or the overall picture. And I applaud you for picking up the torch and running with it again.
Yeah, thanks very much.
And
Well,
if
we're
I
going
can be of any help.
We'll appreciate that. We're going to keep trying, so
Yeah,
thanks very much.
Absolutely.
Councillor Minions?
Oh, sorry.
Thank you. I just wanted to thank you for coming and speak strongly in support of trying to move this forward. I think that, I know it is a challenging issue, but I see it as such an opportunity because we have dollars going towards tourism and marketing in our community being paid for by the city. We have Alberni Valley Tourism, people doing great work, but there's more dollars available that would not have to come from local taxpayers. It just seems like a no-brainer. I think of the I Get It campaign that the city ran last year or the year before as a great example of something that funds like that could go toward. And I think that of all the marketing the city has done since I've been on council, that was the campaign that the community seemed to really feel passionately about. And I think we only ran one round of it, possibly because it's expensive to do, and that comes directly from taxpayer dollars. Something like this could be funding those ads that could be really going to promote our community and talk about what we have here. So wish you luck and let me know if we can help.
Well, you know, one thing just in closing, if even in your own chats with local hotel and motel owners, you know, discuss it with them, because I think a lot of them have a hard time understanding the value of the program. They kind of think it's their money, but it's not. And so we'll take that kind of help from you for sure. Thanks.
A comment, Mr. Mayor?
Yes, Councillor Alberni.
Thanks. Yeah, I fully support in past council budgets processes. It's a logical place for us to be able to receive some revenue from tourists coming through town, and being able to apply that to our tourism industry and marketing the community. So I applaud your efforts, Mr. Collette, very much, and I hope you're successful. And I do hope that door is open, and hopefully we can work something out.
Great, thank you.
Councillor McClellan?
Yeah, thanks a lot. I guess when we had it, it was under the regional district, and it was the whole valley. Seems like I was around at the time. I wasn't on that committee, but was working with volunteering in a different way of getting people to come to Port Alberni, and it just seemed like they thought they were spending money that they could keep, and got very annoyed when it cost money to send someone to a trade show, even as far as Seattle. So I think we're going to have to change what we do, our thoughts, and it's not something the city can do in its budget. It's not our money, and it's not something we tax for. So it's not something that we're going to be able to champion, but anything we can do to help, I wish it didn't go, but it went, and it just seems like it don't want to come back. So I hope you're successful.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Bill. Oh, sorry.
Okay. I just have one question for Mr. Collette. I agree with Councillor Minions that it's a no-brainer. What I don't understand is why is this not done? I understand we're only 2 communities on the island that do not have this initiative going. What is the opposition? Can you educate me on that? I don't see why it's not a benefit to the community.
I've had trouble wrapping my head around that for 5 years as well, and it's education, I guess, is really what it boils down to. Is getting the motel owners to recognize that when you talk to them, they think, oh, my customers won't pay another tax. What they fail to recognize is that their customers staying in properties all over Vancouver Island are already paying the tax. So it's like arguing against the GST. We all pay the GST. So it's a non-argument as far as I'm concerned. But again, we have to educate those people into understanding that non-argument. So that's one of the opposition to it. Councillor McClellan pointed out the history of the program. I think that the current operators of the voluntary program struggled with the fact that there was a paid employee that was part of the program. And maybe back then that wasn't necessary. I don't know. I wasn't here then. I really don't know. But today, I would certainly push for a paid employee, because you can't expect something off the side of your desk. You know, if we ever get to this point, I would really encourage whoever is the DMO to pay somebody and have expectations of that employee. So.
And comparing to other communities, who's actually handling this after it comes back from the government?
Like Tourism Tofino, Tourism Ucluelet, Tourism Oceanside Tourism, all these organizations that you see the word tourism in there, they are typically funded by the MRDT.
Thank you.
Yep.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Bill.
And was that the Jets that just scored?
I don't know.
But it didn't help any. It's still 3-1 for the other guys.
All right, Council, we're going on to unfinished business. First are marijuana bylaws. Just as a way of introduction, I'm concerned that there are some major changes coming our way from both the federal and provincial governments, and I'd like to propose a motion that Council for the City of Port Alberni direct staff to proceed with steps required to review the city's current bylaws related to marijuana, cannabis, in order to ensure their compliance with potential changes expected from the federal government.
I'll second that motion, Mr. Mayor.
Just to wrap up, I'm concerned that we may find that our current bylaw may not withstand challenges. Certainly want to know what other communities are going through with respect to their bylaws, and make sure that as we move down this path, that ours is compliant with what's coming our way. Councillor McClellan?
Yeah, I agree with the motion, but I'd also would like to make sure that with our bylaw, the main strength we have is the zoning and the distance between facilities in this so-called medical marijuana thing. And I'm hoping we can keep the same distances or maybe even expand them, because our city area isn't that large. And to get a whole lot of places selling the product is probably a little extra for what we got here until we know more about it.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Minions?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I want to thank first Councillor Paulson for his report that he wrote up from the session that a few people attended at AVICC, because I wasn't able to make that one, so it was very helpful to have a debrief on that. I think that we should certainly be exploring how our bylaw is going to move forward when the new regulations come in. One thing that I noted in Councillor Paulson's report is that the third reading is scheduled for June 7th, and I'm wondering if we should have our staff wait until after that date to really put time into this in case the legislation changes or there's, more shifts that come forward, dates change, that kind of thing. It's been a changing process already, it seems, so I just don't want to add unnecessary work if we're not quite there yet.
Okay, thank you. Anything else? Councillor Alberni?
Thanks. Similar to Councillor Minions, I think it's good that we're open to ensuring that our bylaw is going to be compliant with whatever legislation comes down. We've gotten a little bit of direction from the province, but we seem to be pretty far away yet before the federal laws change or whatever those are going to look like with it going through the Senate. So I think maybe we're a little premature, but I certainly don't have any opposition to opening the discussion so that when the time comes we're ready. I just don't know if there's anything to do right now.
Okay, Councillor Paulson?
I think that people were expecting this to be done by July the 1st, and it's not going to be done by July the 1st. They're calling for late August or even into September, maybe October. But I think the spirit of the motion really is to try and get out in front of this. If it gets legalized on September 15th, we want to be ready before that. I think we want to be ready to move and so on. And the other thing is we want to make sure that we don't confuse the legalization of recreational marijuana with non-medical or with medical marijuana use. And the medical marijuana shops that we have will still remain illegal in the federal acts, and they will still be governed that your medical marijuana should be done through a due process rather than off the street like it is now. But just we want to make sure that those two things keep separated, and they're not related at all. So just something to talk about.
Many communities in BC, particularly those who are at ABICC, have done this work and have done the review. So a lot of the work has been done for us as a municipality already. So they're certainly far ahead of us as a city, perhaps because we already had the bylaw before most others. Regardless, I want to make sure what I'm proposing is that we're ready regardless of what comes our way. Councillor Soy?
Thank you for bringing up the subject. And at the AVICC, I also attended the workshop, and it was actually the provincial legal counsel that was there to speak on the matter. The concerns that I have are the following. First of all, there's not much support heading down through the provincial government in getting. The provincial government has actually taken steps ahead, as into the age and so forth and regulations and working through that. The problem that we're going to fall on is that the regulations are coming down provincially, and the purchases and the sales are going to be going through the liquor board people who will be licensing individuals, dispensaries through the provincial government, and also workers that are in these dispensaries. My concern is that when these laws come out and put in place, that a lot of the actual dispensaries that we have in our community will not qualify. They still have to go through a permit process, that the final word with the acceptance of the zoning bylaw that we already have in existence, that the final say would be up to that branch of government to say yay or nay. The only issue, speaking with the legal counsel that we have, is that we may be stuck with individuals, dispensaries that we have already licensed that will not be in conformity with the new laws. And it's going to be a legal battle to have them shut down. That's the issue. So I support and I'm really anxious to get more of a report from staff on this matter, but I would also like to actually invest in seeking some legal advice and as into how to approach this and how we're going to deal with those non-conforming dispensaries.
Okay, anything else, Council? On the motion then, all those in favor?
Amen.
Yeah, it's unanimous. Carried. Thank you. And the second piece of unfinished business, MSP increases. Again, it's my motion. So just concerned that we, Council should be provided with the information about the impact of increases, particularly in 2019, 2020, but also generally as it would impact our 5-year plan. So the motion is that Council for the City of Port Alberni direct staff to provide a report regarding the impact of the 2019 medical services plan increases on the city's budget.
I'll second that motion, Mr. Mayor.
Any comment, Council? Just note that it is causing some interesting concern in a number of communities, and I think it's prudent for us to get the information from staff, whatever it is. So, on the motion, all those in favor? Councillor Alberni? It's unanimous. Thank you. Council, that brings us to item 2, and the item is in response to a letter basically asking for a review of a decision from Mr. Letourneau regarding the 5109 Athol Street, otherwise known as the Arrowview Hotel. And I believe Mr. Letourneau is here this evening. Mr. Letourneau, welcome.
Well, thank you for seeing me again. I appreciate it. I think I don't know if you got my documents today from the architect and so forth, but first, before I begin, I just wanted to let council know that even though it felt like a last-minute event last time, since I've obtained this property, I've constantly been in touch with people and trying to develop in terms of the background on that. So although I haven't presented documentation at this point, it wasn't something that I really left to the end. I have constantly been working hard to get a bigger picture and look in many directions, from structural to business model and everything. So just I wanted you to know that even though I'm putting papers on the table tonight, I've constantly been moving forward. This is not just something I left. Even I had other things. It's been something that I've engaged in a lot with professionals from day one. What I have presented to council, and I've obtained architecture advice, engineering advice, and contractors. So I've tried to put together a team, and I've got Raymond DeBille Architects, who's got other properties in the city, and I've sat down with him. He's been away for a while, so we haven't been able to develop a cohesive, clear, plan that's got everything together, but we want to move forward with that, and I'm seeking council's consideration that will allow me to try to move this forward and not to look at just demolishing the building. I mean, I can go on and on. Maybe if council has questions that you want to propose to me. I did try to submit a timeline that we put together, and it's, as I said, it's not a a solid, detailed plan. We need to sit down with the other engineers. I've sat down with the structural engineer already to discuss some of the plans, and he's had a brief discussion with Raymond himself. So I am trying to move it forward, and I'm seeking consideration from council tonight. If there's any questions or anything, I'm more than happy to discuss it.
Mr. Letourneau, what I have in front of me and what council has in front of us is a letter from you. We don't have any supporting documents.
Okay.
We got them at 6:30 tonight.
I sent them to you tonight. I think Raymond, because he'd been busy, he sent them also. I think he may have forwarded it to Scott. I apologize for that. I was coming over and I thought he'd already sent them, and we talked and then he had forwarded them, and so when I got here I sent them off to you as well. Basically, and I don't have, I could give you this copy. Basically, we put together a timeline of looking what work's going to be done, how we're going to put the team together, when we will do would it be best if I offered to give you the copy that I have right here?
No, if I have it electronically, that's
Okay.
sufficient, but getting it half an hour before a meeting starts is rather problematic.
Well, that was the copy when I arrived here. I believe there was already a copy. That maybe it was sent to Scott only. I apologize for that. Raymond, he was communicating with Scott. So they had a discussion, I believe, last week, and I believe he sent the information to Scott today. I just, when I arrived, because I wasn't certain about it, I sent it to all of you just for the sake of making sure that I had sent it to you. I apologize that it was delayed. Him and I worked on it this weekend, and I've only received it yesterday, and he printed it up, this final draft for me today, and that. So I apologize that it's last minute, and it's last minute from me, but I believe he sent it this afternoon.
Okay, thank you, Council. Councillor Sauvé?
Yeah, I echo the mayor's sentiments on this. You got to make sure that if you're making any type of request that's going to go before council, corresponding with us directly is not the way to do it. It has to go through our staff and the city clerk, so it could be prepared for us to actually have time to visit this. Okay. What I'm seeing here and briefing through it real fast is that you're before us, and I don't know if you're going to make that request tonight, but for a 3 to 4 weeks extension. Is that what you're asking?
Well, I guess, if we look at the timeline, so it would, I'm not really clear, and I thought I was going to request that you, receive the demolish order. I apologize if I'm not fluid in how council works. And I apologize this, Raymond hadn't been away, so I've been talking to his team. He's just returned back, and that's why he was only able to sit down with Scott. So I apologize for the delay.
No, you don't need to apologize.
Okay.
It's just the thing is the staff is there available to you to make sure that whatever you want to present before council, that it's well done and it's uniformed. And, and I echo the mayor again as to the fact that it's coming to us at the last minute like this is somewhat frustrating on my part anyways, that, I would have liked to have this information before. But receiving a report of a timeline from the architect, it doesn't really give me an outlook about what we're going to be doing. So,
well, I know that Scott had a discussion with him on Friday, and I believe that he communicated with him this afternoon. I'm not looking for a thing, but I didn't try. He just returned from his holidays. I can't control that, and I apologize for that.
Mr. Letourneau, let me just interrupt. City Clerk?
Mr. Mayor, the Director of Development Services can probably provide a summary to Council on the information that was received this afternoon and what sort of provisions Council can consider under the Community Charter legislation.
That would be helpful. Mr. Smith?
Okay.
So I did speak to Mr. DeBeeld on Friday. At that point in time, he hadn't been engaged by Mr. Letourneau, but was going to be working with him over the weekend. I received the information from the architect a little after 5:30 today. It does indicate that he has now been engaged by Mr. Letourneau to work on his behalf on this project, and does lay out a bit of a work plan about how to evaluate the building. When I look at what they've shown here and some of the timelines, one thing that if council wish to consider is that if I read the timelines correctly, within 6 weeks, so 45 days, the architect would have engaged a series of professionals to do a complete review of that building and how it could potentially be brought up to the current building code and provide a report to Mr. Letourneau in that regard. Council could, if it wished, not rescind its order. You could keep that declaration and that order to demolish, but you could extend that time, 45 days, that would allow the architect and the various engineers and professionals to go through, and he's laid out quite a detailed, everything from architectural, structural, mechanical, everything, evaluation of that building, and that would then provide Mr. Letourneau with a very accurate and realistic information on what it would take to potentially bring that building up to code. The architect then goes into further thing about potential rezonings and all those kinds of things that would take quite a bit longer. I wouldn't suggest you extend it that long. 45 days, as laid out by the architect, is something that council could consider. So you don't rescind your order, but you could extend it to allow that work to be done if council wished.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Washington?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Smith, could all this be done and it still be deemed uninhabitable and to be demolished with some of the red flags that are popping up here in my head?
Well, that's what this would do. You have a professional architect who's talking about engaging everything from structural, mechanical, civil, geotechnical engineers and a general contractor to look at this, do a very thorough analysis, and prepare a summary report on what that all means. That could result saying it's going to cost you way more to try and repair it up to today's code than it would be to build a brand new building. We don't know that. That's what the professionals are paid to do. But that work has not been done to date. That extension would allow that work based on the architect's schedule. It's just something that council could consider, but I wouldn't suggest you rescind your order.
But in your professional opinion, should this not have been done before Mr. Letourneau even took possession of the building?
I do not wish to speak for Mr. Letourneau. Ideally speaking, this would have been the first thing that would have been started.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Alberni?
Thank you. I find this very difficult to accept. At the last minute, like Councillor Washington just said, and Mr. Smith just said. This is something that should have happened months ago. A timeline like this, 3, 4, or 6 weeks. This is work that could have been done a long time ago, so I don't understand why it's coming up at the last minute. I frankly don't trust that it's actually going to happen. So I don't know. I don't put a lot of stock in something that comes to council at this late juncture, and then expects us to believe that it's going to happen.
Okay, thank you. Anything else, council? Mr. Letourneau, I'm sure you appreciate how frustrating this is for council. We've been working on this particular building as a matter of public safety for quite a number of years. Literally, pieces of that building are falling off onto the street and onto the buildings beside it. So this is clearly a matter of public safety, and under the Municipal Act, it's also really clear that the building doesn't meet the reason not to order it being demolished. So we made our decision last time based on the state of disrepair of that building.
Okay.
And we were sorry, but
Yes.
as I said to you last time, we were really clear every step of the way in what our concerns were about that building even before you actually purchased it. So nothing has changed for us. So that's, I guess what we're trying to understand is, what has changed in your circumstance in terms of information that would cause us to give an extension?
Well, first, as I mentioned, although you haven't had a document in front, I've been working with people to try and develop where we go with this building for a long time. And in terms of even Raymond's team, I've been talking to them since the last meeting. He just returned last Wednesday. So we've only been able to have a talk directly with the main architect, but I've been talking with him. I've talked since we've last seen. I've been talking back to Brad Smith, no, sorry, Scott. Yeah, Brad West, sorry. When I seen you last time, it wasn't about I hadn't been doing things. I hadn't put this money on the table to move with this, but having said that, the timing was not right, because I already had been planning to move forward with things. When Scott had submitted the letter to me to say that you have to come before council, it had been working on this already. It hadn't been presented to council or to Scott, but it's not that I haven't been working on these things and that. So I am now in a predicament where you guys have really pushed me, but it's also the timing. It's unfortunate timing, but it's the timing that I've been actually trying to move things forward anyways. And unfortunately, last time when we came here, that I haven't had documentation for you. So I'm working hard to try and get this done. As I mentioned before, financially, the goal in terms of the rezoning and everything like that was something that I couldn't see. I've sat down with Raymond now, and I've talked with Brad and talked about, okay, where can we take this? Where can we move this so that we can meet the financial requirements and also meet the requirements of the city? And so I'm trying to move it so that it's financially feasible, and also I meet all the needs that you guys have. As I mentioned before, well, I won't even get there, but it's not that I haven't been working on this. That's all I'm trying to say. It's not, even today, I apologize that it came at 5:30, because I'd actually contacted him because I wasn't clear whether he would be forwarding the information, because I wasn't sure if you guys wanted it from myself or if you wanted it from the professional. And he just got back, so today he's been busy. So I did try to reach him earlier. He didn't respond, or he didn't answer his phone. He called me back, and I thought he'd already submitted the documents to you earlier in the afternoon. I didn't know it was 5:30, and I apologize for that. And it's an unfortunate situation or timing that his holidays happened to be, when I was trying to reach him and that, but it's not because I wasn't trying. So it's not me trying to come at the last minute and dump something on the table. Since I've been here last, I've been working very hard to meet your needs, to be able to get some reconsideration, to do this. And I believe that we can move this forward. I mean, I'm working hard to make it work. And that, even if it seems like that, even if unfortunately today I'm dropping some documents and they get to you, or that my timing with the architect and he's busy, I apologize for that, but it's not something that I'm trying to perpetuate this last minute sort of situation.
Okay, I think council understands your situation, Mr. Letourneau. Thank you. Hey, council, any other questions? What's the wish of council in terms of responding to this? Councillor Sobey?
Well, in the spirit of development and to get something moving here and to be able to have working relationship in any person wanting to develop in their community, I'm prepared to make the motion, and I would like to see how council once and for all, how they support it or they don't. I'm prepared to make the motion that we extended 45 days. We're not going to rescind the order, and after myself reviewing what the our city planner has discussed, and I had the time to review the timeline and to get these professionals at least look at the building. And this is truly in the spirit of just working with developers. We're not here to give you a hard time. We want to develop in this community, and we want to be a progressive community. So I'm just going to put the motion out there and see if somebody's willing to second it.
Is there a seconder for that motion?
I'll second the motion, and only so I can talk to it again.
Okay.
But, my problem is if we give you the 45 days and you spend money with your architect and your engineers, we're going to be back here 45 days, talking about exactly the same thing we are today. And to be quite honest, after the presentation at the last council meeting with the photos and stuff of the building, I'm kind of worried about the money that you're spending on this project, that you may, in all likelihood, not get back. And I think you're going to be in a position where you're probably better off to demolish and put your investment into a new build. I'm just worried that you're sending good money after bad. That's all.
You're absolutely, and this has been a message that's been put to me a number of times. What I would say is what I would say is, in fact, this delay has actually allowed us to create some, I think, very interesting ideas on how to save a lot of money and make the building 10 times more, not 10 times, but much more structurally sound. And it's adopting the concept of new is cheaper. And I think I'd mentioned to one of the councilmen that, in fact, where the main losses is going to be like the front of Athol. That's a complete write-off. But in fact, the way we're going to approach it is we're just going to build new right behind it. So we're going to take the value of building new, incorporate it into what is sound within the building, and therefore, that's the plan and how to make it sound, because this has been very clear to me, and it's been presented. It's not, everyone has made it very clear that you could spend a lot of money and you may need to build, it's cheaper to build new. And I absolutely agree. But I've tried to talk with people, and including the structural engineer, when we talked about how we can incorporate steel into the building and things like that in order to reduce the cost and reduce the cost of renovation, which is really often much more than building new.
Okay,
so we're trying to use new in those places.
Councillor Washington.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I applaud Councillor Sauvé for giving the development thing a chance. It's a historic building, and who wouldn't like to see it rejuvenated? However, I have to agree with Councillor Paulson. I don't think 45 days is going to be enough for you to come up with any kind of conclusion to this unless they walk in one day and just say, no, it's not worth going. There's buildings far younger than yours that have far more problems than people imagine until they start taking down walls and finding asbestos and finding all kinds of weird and decayed things and rotten wood and such. I'm just afraid you're wasting your money. I'm sorry. That's just my
I agree with you.
And
Yes.
just to echo that, Mr. Letourneau, I worry that you have seriously been taken advantage of. And I'm sad to say that I think that's happened to you, but that everything that you're telling us and everything that we've seen and all of the effort that we've put into trying to create a direction for this building, it just seems to me like somebody has taken advantage of you, and it's unfortunate. And I'd hate to see you waste your money.
Okay, I appreciate it. Maybe I just add, Brad West was the engineer that did the structural design for the demolish plan. So he's the same person I'm talking to now. So he's not telling me it's cheaper. He hasn't told me anything like that. But he's not giving me the stop sign in terms of the strategy we've come up with. So I'm hoping, and I hope that I haven't been taken care of in all these things, and I really hope that we'll make it move forward. That's the goal, and I really that's the option. I appreciate that you guys are willing to give me this chance.
Well, we haven't voted on
it. Don't get confused. Okay. I just want to make sure, as a developer in our community, that you have a voice. That's the only reason why I'm putting out the motion, to give you a voice and to speak on a matter and for councils to make their decision.
Councillor Minions?
Yeah, I just wanted to follow up that I agree with Councillor Sauvé. It's we want to support development in our community, absolutely, and I think as a council we've shown that. I think how we showed that to you was that we stopped the process when you purchased the building, because we started this process prior to that. And I, as much as I would love to see this building fixed up, I love old buildings. I haven't seen anything at this point that shows me that that's actually going to happen. So I would be worried if we gave a 45-day delay or extension that this building might fall down in 45 days and fall and seriously hurt someone. And that's why we started this process. And I don't think that we have seen anything substantial that would, make us responsibly change that decision. So as much as I would like to support a developer trying to invest in our community, I don't think that it's responsible for us to do that this time.
Okay. Could I just add one thing?
Councillor Alemany?
Thank you. Can I just ask if the fire chief is in the room?
No, he's not.
I was just wondering about the safety of the building and the immediate safety. If you know, it's had a fire in the past, whether the structure of the building has changed in any way in the past little while that would make it more susceptible to fire or anything like that. I'm just concerned, you know, from the safety aspect that giving another 45 days over the summer could be a risk in that.
Mr. Smith, do you have any comment on that? Or is that beyond your area of responsibility?
Certainly, fire-related stuff is beyond my area of responsibility. The fire department did, in the report that came to council previously, the fire department has determined that if something was to occur, it would be a defensive fire. They would not enter the building.
Okay, thank you. Council, I'd like a recorded vote on this one. So I will call the vote. Councillor McClellan?
Opposed.
Councillor Sauvé?
Opposed?
Councillor Paulson?
Oh, opposed.
I'm opposed. Councillor Minions?
Opposed.
Councillor Washington?
Opposed, Mr. Mayor?
Councillor Alemany?
Opposed, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, there you have it. It's unanimous. We're opposed to the motion, so I'm sorry, Mr. Letourneau, you don't have your extension.
Could I just mention one note, please? In terms of this discussion of fire, it's the stairwell in the middle of the building. That was the only thing that burnt in that fire. And in terms of structural integrity, the building was structurally secured in order to do the demolition. So these two items that is creating concern is the fire. That was strictly in that, due to the drywall, the stairwell is what burnt only in that building. And the building was structurally supported in order to allow for the demolition to occur.
Thank you,
Okay,
Mr.
well, that's
Letourneau. We haven't changed our position. Okay, Council, moving on then. Councillor McClellan?
At what point is the demolition supposed to be starting, and where are we on that?
Mr. Smith, 30 days must be coming up close.
So council's order still maintained, so we're about halfway through that 30, it's been about 2 weeks, so there's about another 2 weeks. That's where Mr. Letourneau is being asked to demolish the building. When that time expires, then the city then has the right to either through its own forces or contract enter the property and demolish the building. We will most likely get prices on the demolition of it for outside contractors, and given that the price of what those are likely to be, those would have to come to council for approval.
Okay, thank you very much. Council, brings us to our staff reports. The first one is on accounts, and Councillor Washington, could you please make that motion?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move the certification of the Director of Finance dated May 14, 2018 be received, and checks numbering 141427 to 141563 inclusive, and payment of accounts totaling $709,640.43 be approved.
I'll second that motion, Mr. Mayor.
All those in favor? Carried. Councillor Allen, thank you. Carried. City Clerk, reporting on the alternate approval process results, Johnson Road North boundary extension.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is just advising council of the next steps. This is properties at 3376, 3386 proposed to be incorporated within the city's boundaries. The alternate approval process was completed on April the 30th with no forms submitted in opposition, which means that approval of the electors by the alternate approval process has been obtained. So with council's resolution, the next steps would be to forward a package of information to the ministry, at which point they would start to begin the process of preparing supplementary letters patent to incorporate those cities or those properties within the city's boundary.
Okay, thank you very much, City Clerk. Councillor Sauvé, I'm wondering if you could please make this motion and maybe break it into two. The first one is to receive the report, and then the next one is the rest of it.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First, I'd like that the report from the City Clerk dated May 4, 2018 be received.
Second, Mr. Mayor.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Councillor Alemany? Carried.
that the City of Port Alberni has obtained the assent of the electors to petition the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing to extend the boundaries of the City of Port Alberni as it appeared in the Gazette under issue of March 29, 2018, and in the Alberni Valley News issue of March 21st and March 28, 2018, that all relevant legislation, requirements pertaining to a municipal boundary extension in the Local Government Act and Community Charter have been completed. That the parcels approved for inclusion within the City of Port Alberni are as followed. Lot A, DDEP 41630, District Lot 152, Alberni District Plan 7451, except part in Plan VIP 52692, and Lot A, District Lot 152, Alberni District Plan VIP 57061, 3376 and 3386 Johnson Road, Port Alberni.
Is there a second? Thank you. All those in favor? Councillor Alemany? Carried. Thank you, Council. We just got bigger. By 2 acres. Director Thorpe. Welcome. Director of Parks, Recreation and Heritage. Music to my ears. New Aquatic Center, consultation.
Yes. So in August of 2017, the city approached the Alberni Claycrot Regional District to consider taking the lead on the sort of leadership role in the development of a new aquatic center in the Alberni Valley. And so we've got a letter attached from the ACRD indicating their intention to host facilitated discussions with elected officials both with the city as well as the regional district to discuss next steps and sort of what the flavor is or what the interest is of the elected officials to move forward in that, whatever that model might look like. And so the regional district has asked the city to fund that facilitation. So for the $5,500 plus GST, I think that it would show our support as a municipality in those efforts of the regional district.
Great. It was, that was the turning point. Councillor McClellan, can you make these motions, please? Maybe make the first one to receive it and the second one for where the money's going to come from.
The letter from the Alberni Clackatt Regional District dated May 2nd, 2018 regarding listing of services to Nielsen Welch Consulting, Inc. in facilitating discussions with elected representatives of the Alberni Clackatt Regional District and City of Port Alberni be received.
I'll second that.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Councillor Alemany?
Favor.
Carried.
That the mayor and council of the City of Port Alberni approve funding the facilitated discussions, $5,500 plus GST from the Reserve for Parks and Recreation Future Expenditure Fund.
Seconder?
I'll second that, Mr. Mayor.
Any discussion? Councillor McClellan?
Yeah, I wasn't able to attend the meetings at the regional district where this came up. What is the logic that we pay all of it instead of just our 60%?
CEO, did you want to respond to that?
Mr. Mayor, you will recall that the city asked the regional district to at least explore or consider taking the lead role in replacing the aquatic center that the city currently owns. And the regional district has been very accommodating in that request with as you know, a very heavy workload over there, and yet they have pursued this. And they have said, yes, we will look into it, but given that the city requested that they do this, will we provide the funding? The city does have funding in reserve that we've been setting aside for a new pool, and it seems reasonable that the city would not expect the regional district to incur costs while exploring something that we asked them to do.
And this is something that we're going to be expecting the entire valley to be part of the discussion on. It's going to be open up to everybody to find out what the pros and cons are and have it facilitated by this consulting firm that is very experienced in doing this. We do have money set aside, and $5,500, given the amount of money that's in that fund, is not a huge amount of it. So it seemed reasonable to consider that. Question? Okay, on the motion, all those in favor? Councillor Alberni?
Favor.
Carried. Thank you. Council, from Director of Development Services, strata conversion application. And before I let you speak there, Mr. Smith, I just wanted to say, on behalf of Council, thank you so much for all the extra work you've done over the last number of years. You've also been responsible for engineering, and you've been responsible for bylaw, on top of being responsible for development. None of those three portfolios are anything other than totally engaging. So you have been the three-hatted man now for quite a number of years. And then on top of that, every so often the CAO disappears and he says, oh, by the way, Mr. Smith, could you be deputy CAO for me while I'm in my absence, please? So, and you do that and you still have the smile throughout the entire thing. So thank you so much for all that you've done. And I applaud you for hanging in there. And I assure you that we are coming to the end of this time as we work through our process of hiring new staff. So I just wanted, on behalf of Council, to say thank you, and we recognize it, and we really appreciate all the extra effort that you put in. So.
Clapping from afar.
Was that one-handed or two-handed?
Two all the way.
So, I'll just go over this.
I've never known you to be at a loss for words before, Mr. Smith.
True.
So
That rarely occurs. Council has before you this existing building at 2848 2nd Avenue was completely reconstructed under a building permit in 2016-17 into two self-contained dwelling units. The owner has applied to now do a building strata conversion of it. The Municipal Property Act gives guidance to council when you're considering these. Two of the big ones, council must not approve it unless it substantially complies with our local government bylaws and today's building code. This property is zoned R2, R1 and 2 family residential, and does meet the bulk and site regulations for our zoning regulations. A building code was reviewed or was completed by Wedman Engineering, and that is attached. Both myself and the building inspector have reviewed that documentation to ensure that it covers what is necessary. Councils also indicate that it must consider the priority of rental over privately owned. I have attached the most recent vacancy rates that we have for apartments. We don't have, there's not a vacancy rate collected for duplex type units, so the apartment one gives you a bit of an indication. Our vacancy rate has dropped significantly from 2014, but it is still above the provincial average. So it's something we need to, anytime this type of application comes forward, we certainly need to be mindful of that. This is just one duplex. It's currently not occupied, so there's no existing tenants impacted by this. Essentially, it does comply with the BC Building Code, and the Development Services Department does support the strata conversion for Council's consideration, and I'd be pleased to answer questions.
Any questions, Council? Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Minions, are you able to make this motion, please?
That Council for the City of Port Alberni approve the conversion of 2848 2nd Avenue to a building strata, and the approving officer be authorized to execute the required strata plan, and that this Council approve that, and that This council approval is valid for no more than 2 years from the date of adoption of this resolution.
Is there a seconder?
Second, Mr. Mayor.
All those in favor? Councillor Alberni?
Favor.
Carried. And from the Director of Engineering and Public Works, Coal Creek Phase 2 sanitary sewer upgrade, CAO, I bet you are going to have something to say.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Unfortunately, Director Takama is ill today and was not able to attend. I can speak to his report. The issue at hand is that we're seeking council's approval of awarding the tender of the construction of Coal Creek Phase 2 sanitary sewer upgrade to the lowest and only bidder, Hazelwood Construction Services. This project that we're calling Coal Creek Phase 2 is quite complicated, I understand. Multiple infrastructure work as well as street. It includes, it's integral to future development along 6th Avenue corridor, and it includes continued separation of storm and sewer. I can tell council that we had $650,000 in the budget for this project. We knew that that was light. Our engineers were telling us it would be more like $900,000 after we expanded the scope of work. We didn't seek an increase in budget because we were in the budget process already, and we had a grant application that we were hopeful would come through. So what we're asking council now to do is to approve the project subject to grant funding. And if we're successful with grant funding, which we're optimistic we will be, then there will be about $1.4 million available for that project. And we estimate total cost at 1.3 given this bid.
Although this says $1,175,000, so is there are some additional costs? Is that what you're saying?
That's correct. That's the construction costs, and there would be some further engineering costs managing the project.
Gotcha.
That'll take it to an estimated 1.3.
And would this be the final? It says Phase 2. Is this the final one on Coal Creek? Would this wrap it up? It's been a.
I can't answer that. It's a continuation, obviously uphill, but
right.
I don't know if we would call the next phase Coal Creek Phase 3. I don't know.
We've had some real financial breaks on this one, so hopefully it'll carry on.
We have. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Paulson, are you able to make this motion?
I'd like to move that the Director of Engineering and Public Works report dated May the 9th, 2018 be received, and that subject to a successful grant application, Council for the City of Port Alberni award the Coal Creek Phase 2 sanitary sewer upgrade contract to Hazelwood Construction Services for $1,175,678.80 plus GST from funds provided in the 2018 financial plan.
Is there a seconder?
I'll second that motion, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor McClellan?
Yeah, we have a Hazelwood Construction winning the bid. How long is he willing to wait at that price for us to get a grant?
Council's experience with grants, and sometimes you get an inkling that you're going to be successful on a grant, but the funders are very strict on talking about that kind of stuff before it's announced. I can tell you that I'm optimistic that we're going to get a grant in the range of $750,000. If we don't get a grant for some reason, then the project will not go ahead. So I hope that answers that question.
Yeah, I was just curious, because if I was Hazelwood Construction and I put a bid, I'd kind of like to know when I was going to start, I guess, is one thing. And the other thing, do we not have funds, if necessary, contingency funds in our capital works program? I see we've just started our first one for this year in the paper. I don't know if they're accurate or not, but that's a fair chunk into the year, and we had over a year's worth of capital projects budgeted in the budget. So is there money there that could be used for this?
CEO?
If we were going to not use grant funds and we wanted to go ahead with this project, we would have to come back to council and with a recommendation that one or more projects be either curtailed or modified to free the money up. I don't think we're going to have to do that.
Okay. Got it. Anything else, Council? Councillor Minions?
Just as a follow-up to Councillor McClemens' question, is there a legal time frame where the bidder is bound, or does it expire at some point and they can say they want to change their bid if it takes too long?
There will be a time period during which they can't back out of the bid. I'm not sure what that time period is.
On the motion then, All those in favor? Councillor Alamani? Okay, it's carried. Council, that brings us then to the McLean Mill Society AGM. We have Bill Collette presenting the minutes of the McLean Mill Society Annual General Meeting and year-end financials.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council. We held our meeting on Monday, April 30th at our first AGM, and that was held at the McLean Mill in front of, I'm not sure how many people were there, but there was a few people in the audience. Member was there represented by Mr. Smith, who was wearing yet another hat that day, and I echo your comments, by the way, with the Chamber of Commerce. He's a very astute fellow. Anyways, he was there representing the city of Port Alberni. We had our quorum. We went through our agenda. I don't know whether I need to go through all of this, but we presented our financial statements, and they were accepted on behalf of the city. We had our president's report, our executive director's reports. We appointed our directors. One of the three new directors was in attendance. The other two were not. And we appointed our auditor for our review engagement report for 2018. And that was pretty much it.
Okay, so Mr. Collette, thank you so much for getting to this point, and thank you for sharing with Council. But more importantly, thank you for hanging in there for this entire process. It's been quite a journey for all of us, but it was a vision that we had 4 years ago, or 3.5 years ago now, and here we are at the end of it, and you've made some really good progress. Not the least of which is that you and the team, which obviously includes your executive director, Deanna Beaudoin, have made believers out of doubters. And people in this council weren't doubters at all, which is why we have supported every step of the way. But there are some in the community that were. And as I say, you've made believers out of doubters. So thank you so much for your hard work. But more importantly, thank you for the professionalism with which the board has conducted its business for this last more than a year now. Councillor Minions? Thanks very much.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to comment on the great job that you guys did at the AGM, and I think it was well said by somebody who was there, who thanked you for being as transparent as you were, and had said that he had been critical of himself in the past, and was really impressed with the work that had been done. I think that a lot of people have been re-engaged in McLean Mill and what the site has to offer, and it's always going to be a struggle for taxpayers who, you know, don't always want to spend money on anything. But, you know, balancing that with a site that I think the community values is really important, and you guys have done a great job of that. I wonder if, just for the public's information, if you wanted to highlight the good news financially.
Sure, I can do that.
Maybe not go over the whole thing, but
no. First, just to the mayor's comments and your comments, Councillor Minions. Credit, a lot of credit is due to the young lady sitting in the audience here. She's really done a great job. She deals with an awful lot of stuff crossing her desk every day, and I'm reminded of it constantly by texts and emails and whatnot, but really she deserves a lot of the credit. We're just along for the ride, and it's a bumpy ride sometimes, but it's enjoyable. Our financials, our revenues were strong. We had total revenues of $466,000. Our expenses, again, I'm not going to go through all of them, but I think we did a good job of controlling our expenses for the most part through the year. We were thrown many curveballs, stuff we didn't expect, and that's just part of running a business. You do a budget and then everything changes next week, and that's just how it goes. But at the end of it, at the end of the year, we report a small surplus of $9,413. So that's encouraging, and so really that's basically it. You know, I can go through any sort of the finer details, but overall, we were pretty pleased with it.
Thank you. Councillor McClellan, you've been part of this and representing council on this this whole McLean Mill Society right since day one. I'm wondering if you want to make the motion to receive the minutes.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we receive the minutes of the McLean Mill Society's AGM.
And I'll second that, Mr. Mayor.
All those in favor? Right. Councillor Alberni?
Carried.
Carried. Thank you.
Thank you.
And Deanna Baudouin, do you have any comments you want to make, or are you just here to support Mr. Collette?
I just make a comment too, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you.
She's lost her voice.
How is that possible?
How is that?
Chris wants
Councillor Alberni, you wanted to say something.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention that one of the really positive things I thought was at the AGM, you know, aside from the positives in the financial and the good work that's being done there, were the comments from Kevin Hunter from the Industrial Heritage Society. I know it's been a really difficult process, you know, a really difficult transition, and there's been some pretty hard times there, and I know that the IHS especially has had challenges there. But it was really great to see Kevin there and be very supportive of what's happening at McLean Mill and the direction that it's going. And it just felt like things are really starting to come together, and it just seemed very positive. So I wanted to make sure that was out there and people were aware of that.
Okay, thank you very much. Council, that brings us to our current status report, page 62. Any questions on that? I have one question, and that's about number 23, and it's the Social Planning Commission, and I think, Mr. Smith, that was you, that's in your bailiwick. Just wonder where we're at with that.
Mr. Mayor, it's currently at a medium priority for council, so
Yeah.
I would be working on the two high priority ones prior to that. So if council wishes to increase that priority, that would be certainly something I would be pleased to.
I'm not suggesting that. I'm just wondering if you're hoping that a new bylaw, a manager of bylaw, is something that they would take off of your plate.
I will have lots of things for the new bylaw manager to work on.
So the answer is yes. Thank you very much. Okay. Anything else, Council? Councillor Sobey?
I just had one question for economic developer, if he was available. There's a lot of talk in the community as what actions the City Council and their visions that they have shared for certain initiatives. We're fortunate enough to have individuals who have prevented some innovating ideas to try and help the community, such as Futures and the Sprout program and so forth. What I would like to know to make sure, you know, if our tax dollars are involved here, and in the spirit of true accountability and transparency, that I would like to ask our economic developer if you could please provide council and the taxpayers out there with an overview of the type of support the city has provided for these kinds of initiatives in our community.
Mr. Mayor and council, I'd be happy to do that. You referenced the Sprout program. It's one of the initiatives that one of several initiatives that Kevin Wright has brought forward for the benefit of the merchants and the community, and I'd like to applaud him for his continual stream of both good ideas and good work. With respect to Sprout, Sprout was originally proposed to make it easier and less expensive for entrepreneurs to get into business and get into an existing building. And what Kevin had proposed was that that we work to allow an entrepreneur to get into a third of the space to begin with, if the building owner was open to that. And then if the business became successful, to expand the size of the footprint that the business had, say 2/3, and then ultimately go the full depth of the building, because many of our buildings in the community are long and narrow. And Kevin's experience in opening Steampunk was that he spent a lot of money bringing it up to code. And so we worked, the former building inspector and the former fire marshal worked with Kevin and myself to get to a point of, yes, that is something that we could look at. And then the city, through my budget, invested further in a document from McGill Engineering, which was to be a template for businesses that were looking to move into building on a smaller footprint. So we supported the initiative. We paid to have the engineering plan done. And then we paid to have Kevin produce some maps for the city that looked at buildings, and in particular empty buildings, where this kind of approach might be taken to it. Kevin has since proposed or put forward an idea called Boxtown, and because I haven't attended all council meetings, I'm not sure that he's actually presented on Boxtown here, but the idea is that he or the community would take a number of shipping containers and build them out so that they adhered to code, put them in a central location. Kevin had his eye on a piece of city-owned property, hasn't brought that forward to council. But then that individuals would be able to get into that for possibly as little as $550 a month or $1,000 a month, as opposed to having to go the route of renovating even a third of a city building that needs a great deal of work. So that's where we're at with respect to Sprout. Kevin also has proposed a business advocate. So Kevin brought forward this idea to myself and Lori Kamiri at Community Futures. We met with with Kevin and Chris Washington of Flandangles to discuss that, and ultimately Lori felt that what Kevin was attempting to do was a duplication of services that were provided variously by Community Futures, by the city, and by the chamber. And so she elected not to fund that. Kevin has argued that an enterprise center in the uptown area would be more accessible and more available to entrepreneurs in the community. And he has made some arrangements with ACAUS to lease a space from them. And he's also been enlisting some professionals for assistance in developing the space. I secured a registration for Kevin to go to social enterprise boot camp at Royal Roads University a few months ago, and the Sean Loney Committee paid for Kevin's expenses to go there. When he came back, he did present to the community about his experience at the boot camp, and he's doing a broader presentation on May 17th at the church just up the street here. I have also indicated to Kevin would like to put 9-foot by 20-foot map or ortho photo in the Enterprise Center. Scott and I have had discussions with a firm that was commissioned to fly over the city and take some new photographs, because we've changed considerably since the last flight was done in 2006. We are doing that, and I've committed to Kevin that through my office we would pay for that map to go up on the wall, because if at the end of the day Kevin did not continue to move forward with the Enterprise Center, then it would still come into the city's hands and be useful. However, Kevin's very determined and committed, and in my view he's been successful, and I expect he will be with the Enterprise Center. Part of the reason I asked him to consider going to the boot camp and bringing up that model was I had suggested to him that it was obvious from the reaction of Community Futures that they weren't willing to pay. I didn't see that I would be willing to commit funds from the economic development budget, but I said to Kevin that if he could prove that it would work in an enterprise model, that I fully expected that council would step up in succeeding budget years. So, and I could go on if you like. I mean, Kevin has proposed a sculpture program in the Uptown that fell off the table for a variety of reasons, and a few months ago I sat down with Kevin and said, let's go through all of the initiatives that you've been putting forward and find out where they're stuck and if there's any point in moving forward. So I think we're doing that.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Minions?
Thank you. I was just going to comment that although that was very helpful information, I think it wasn't really related to our status report at all, so we might want to try to keep it to our status report in the future.
I know, I was just following staff instruction. When is the appropriate time to ask him that question, so you could direct that question to staff.
Okay. Thank you very much. Councillor Washington, are you able to move receipt of the status report?
Question first, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Councillor Alberni.
I'm just wondering if perhaps we could put on, because I get a question a lot in the public about the sewer project, sewage lagoon project, whether we could maybe put that on the current status report and maybe get an update.
Okay. Is that your motion?
I suppose if it needs to be a motion, sure.
Because I don't think it's on that. It's not on the currently on the status report. Although,
maybe it should be.
Yeah, Mr. Smith, you have a comment on that?
Just coincidence, but I'm updating council in my monthly report on some issues around our wastewater treatment.
Right. Okay. CAO?
Mr. Mayor, a large majority of the work that the city does is not on the status report. The status report tracks action items that arise in council for which we don't want to lose track. But it kind of becomes we get focused on that, right? And we forget about all the other stuff. One of the things that staff is working on is a broader tracking document that shows all of the project work that's in the pipe. And there would be hundreds of projects, not, I think, 50-ish or something on here now. Having said that, if council wants any one project on the status report for whatever reason, you could pass a motion and that it will show up the next meeting.
Well, I think it's, as Mr. Smith says, he's got some information on it in his report, so it's available for the public. Okay. Sorry, Councillor Washington, are you able to move receipt of the current status report?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move that the current status report be received.
Second, Mr. Mayor.
All those in favor? Councillor Alberni?
Favor.
Carried. Thank you. Okay. And Mr. Smith?
So I guess I'll start with that part of it.
Sure.
So it's to let council know that 2 equipment requests for proposals have been issued for the Port Alberni wastewater treatment lagoon facility upgrades. The first is for the aeration system, and the second is for the UV disinfection system. Once those have been received, they will come to council, and they will make up a part of the main construction contract, which will then go shortly out there, will then go out for a request for proposal shortly after there in order to get construction started, this summer. And then other parts of the project will continue. Those other parts of contracts, like the outfall construction contract, will be a separate contract. Those kinds of things are all working very hard in steps. But the first 2 big contracts, the equipment ones, have been issued. I hope to bring those to the next council meeting for you to approve those 2 contracts. Those can then go into the main construction contract, which would be the next one to be issued. So that's an update on that. And also just wanted to note that subdivision continues to be active. Issued 2 preliminary layout approval letters for the former high school site, and the developer continues to work on their detailed engineering for those projects. And again, as always, pleased to answer any questions.
You want to highlight what's going on at the former high school site? Because I'm sure we all get asked questions about that.
Certainly. So the first phase of what they're proposing is a 15-lot single-family subdivision off the end of 16th Avenue. And then the other site that they're going to subdivide off is the apartment building site, which is down at Bird and Anderson. So those subdivisions have been, their preliminary layout approval letters have been issued, so the developer knows the conditions they must meet, and they are rapidly working on satisfying those conditions, including some of the detailed engineering work, in order to move those forward.
Any sort of timeline on when we might see some progress on that?
I would expect to see some of their submissions for our review in the next couple weeks.
Okay. And I see the project that we approved a few years ago on Ian and Cox. They've begun construction on that one, so that's good news for us to have some more housing coming into the community.
That's right. And then, although it's not on my report, it'll be on the next one. The developments on McBride Street, that new portion of McBride Street, are very close to receiving their final approval, likely this week.
Great. Okay, thank you. Councillor Sauvé, do you want to move receipt of the report, please?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That the monthly report from the Director of Development Services providing information about current departmental operations be received.
Seconder? Are you seconding it first?
I did second.
Oh, thank you.
You know, it isn't often I agree with Councillor Alberni, but in fact, I don't think it's happened before. But anyway, the comment about the sewage lagoon being more reported on, I think it is valid. There's a lot of people in the community that really don't know why we're doing it. And I get a lot of comments that it wasn't really that broke. Why are you fixing it so expensively? And do you really know it's going to work if you put the sewage outfall in there by APD? So it's a lot of comments that people have been on for a while, and in the last 2 or 3 weeks I've heard a lot of them. So maybe it would be good to have something explaining, hopefully, what is.
Okay. Good to get that update sometime, where we're at. All right, so we've been moved and seconded on the motion. All those in favor? Councillor Alemany?
Favor.
Carried. Thank you. Okay, Council, that brings us to City Clerk bylaws, 2018 election bylaws, an automated vote counting system.
Mr. Mayor, before Council for consideration tonight is 2 bylaws. What we've done is separated our previous election bylaw into 2 and taken the automated vote counting system authorization and procedures and put them in their own bylaw. Nothing has changed with our procedures. It just simply sets them into their own bylaw and doesn't complicate the elections bylaw, so it just makes it for easier reference. The election bylaw has been updated to reflect numbering changes that were made within the last couple of years in the Local Government Act, and also includes the provisions that were endorsed by Council at a meeting earlier in March, and specifically those were for voting day registration and also setting the minimum number of nominators at 10. Other than that, our procedures or everything in the elections bylaw is the same. Those are the main changes. And each of those bylaws is provided for consideration of 3 readings.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Paulson, do you want to make these motions?
Sure.
Please?
That the report dated May the 8th, 2018 from the city clerk be received.
Seconder?
I'll second that, Mr. Mayor.
All those in favor? Councillor Alemany?
Favor.
Carried.
Councillor Alemany, can you hear me? You're sitting on my desk.
I hear you loud and clear.
Okay. That automated vote counting system authorization and procedure bylaw number 4963 be now introduced and read a first time.
I'll second that, Mr. Mayor.
All those in favor? Councillor Alemany?
Favor.
Carried.
That automated vote counting system authorization and procedure bylaw number 4963 be read a second time.
I'll second that, Mr. Mayor.
All those in favor? Councillor Alemany?
Favor.
Carried.
That automated vote counting system authorization and procedure bylaw number 4963 be read a third time.
And I'll second that, Mr. Mayor.
All those in favor? Councillor Alemany?
Favor.
Carried.
You want me to keep going?
Keep going, please.
That election and assent voting 2018 bylaw number 4964 be now introduced and read a first time.
I'll second that, Mr. Mayor.
All those in favor? Councillor McClement?
Yeah, I think it's, I've read over the bylaw. I think it's a good one, especially taking away the use of the provincial voting list. Because like noted in the city clerk's preamble, it's very seldom up to date. In fact, someone who's done a lot of phoning out of that list, I'd say it's about 10% out of date the day it's printed. After that, it goes downhill.
Yeah.
So I think we've got a better system by having people show ID to prove they live in the city, and it might take a bit of time, but it's a good try.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, did we vote on that? No.
Yeah, we did.
We did vote on it? Okay.
Yeah.
That election and assent...
No, we
oh,
didn't.
sorry.
All those in, it was moved and seconded, but we didn't vote on it for the first time. All those in favor?
We did.
We did.
Butted out after the vote.
That election and
Carried.
assent voting 2018 bylaw number 4964 be read a second time.
I'll second that, Mr. Mayor.
All those in favor? Councillor Alemany?
Favor.
Carried.
That election and assent voting 2018 bylaw number 4964 be read a third time.
I'll second that, Mr. Mayor.
All those in favor? Councillor Alemany? Carried. And then that from Director of Development Services, zoning bylaw amendment number 25, Regina Avenue. We have a report from the Director to consider final adoption of zoning bylaw amendment number 25 on Regina Avenue. Councillor McClement, are you able to make that motion, please? Those
Sure.
two motions.
The report dated May the 2nd, 2018, the Director of Development Services considered final adoption of zoning bylaw amendment number 25, 4850 Regina Avenue, Knutson, bylaw number 4948. That the report is be received.
Okay, seconder?
Second, Mr. Mayor.
All those in favor? Councillor Alemany?
Favor.
Carried.
That zoning bylaw amendment number 25, 4850 Regina Avenue, Knutson, bylaw number 4948 be finally adopted, signed by the mayor and clerk, sealed with a corporate seal numbered 4948.
Second, Mr. Mayor.
All those in favor? Councillor Alemany?
Favor.
Carried. Okay, Council, we have, brings us to correspondence for action, and our first item of correspondence is a copy of an email from Darren DeLuca requesting council support, that council support the recommendations that the BC Chamber brought forward in regard to the Trans Mountain Expansion Project. And Councillor McClellan, do you want to move receipt of that? And we'll get it second, and then if there's comment.
Mr. Mayor, just before I make the motion, I think I'd like to make a comment that about 7 years and a couple of weeks ago, this council actually endorsed the Trans Mountain Pipeline and opposed the Enbridge Pipeline. And with the Trans Mountain Pipeline, we were getting an awful lot of benefit here in our area. Now it's canceled. We're not getting that benefit. So I think we should be clear on what we're doing. If we want to reverse that, then that's fine, I guess. So I would like to make the motion that the email dated April 26, 2018, requesting council support the recommendations of the BC Chamber brought forward in regard to the Trans Mountain Expansion Project be received and endorsed.
Okay.
I'll second that, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, comment, Council? All those in favor? Opposed? Councillor Alemany? Okay, so the motion is carried.
No, you got to count down, okay?
I'm actually not counting Chris.
And another one, and another one, and another one.
Okay, and Council, that brings us to the Alberni Valley Chamber of Commerce. We have a letter dated May 3rd requesting temporary road closure on Margaret Street. And, sorry, on Wednesdays from June 13th through to August 15th from 5 to 9:30 to operate a street market, the Market on Margaret. Councillor Minions, do you want to move that motion for us, please?
That the letter dated May 3rd, 2018, requesting a temporary road closure on Margaret Street to Pemberton Street on Wednesdays from June 13th through August 15th from 5 p.m. to 9:30 p.m. to operate a street market be received, and council concur with the request, subject to notification of emergency services, consultation with all affected businesses to minimize potential conflict and traffic concerns, and provision of standard liability insurance.
There's a seconder?
I'll second that.
Discussion, Council?
Mr. Mayor, just for clarification, the letter states it to August 29th. I think that's a typo in your...
I meant to August 29th.
Okay. You sure you want to go that long? I'm just kidding. August 29th, it is. Okay, so on the motion then to August 29th, all those in favor? Councillor Alemany?
Favor.
Carried.
I thought you were sleeping out there. You're sharp.
And BC Transit, the 2018-2019 annual operating agreement. And Councillor Washington, do you want to move that motion?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move that the mayor and council be authorized to sign the BC Transit 2018-2019 annual operating agreement.
I'll second that, Mr. Mayor.
All those in favor? Councillor Alemany?
Favor.
Carried. Then that brings us to our proclamations, Council. First one is from Child Find BC. Councillor Paulson?
That the letter from Child Find BC dated April 20th, 2018, requesting that May be proclaimed as Missing Children's Month and May 25th as Missing Children's Day in Port Alberni and be received, and the month and day proclaimed as requested.
A seconder?
Second that, Mr. Mayor.
All those in favor? Carried. And Special Olympics, BC. Councillor Minions, do you want to move that one, please?
That the email from Special Olympics British Columbia dated April 27th, 2018, requesting that July 21st, 2018 be proclaimed Global Day of Inclusion in Port Alberni be received and the day be proclaimed as requested.
Is there a seconder?
Second, Mr. Mayor.
All those in favor? Councillor Alamani?
Favor.
Carried. And informational correspondence, City Clerk.
A few items, Mr. Mayor. A copy of a letter from the District of Kent supporting Saanach's resolution at this year's UBCM for a moratorium to reduce immediate pressures on agricultural land reserve lands by cannabis production facilities. Vancouver Island Economic Alliance, an email regarding the need for progressive action to support and expand wood industries on Vancouver Island. Copy of a letter from the District of Clearwater to the Health Minister urging consideration of options for an easier transition to the implementation of the employer health tax. A letter from the Ministry of Education announcing the new Premier's Awards for Excellence in Education. Deadline for nominations is June the 18th. The Ministry of Finance, Gaming Policy and Enforcement branch advises of payment to the city representing casino revenue for the period to March 31st, $125,574, and a supporting report from the Director of Finance providing further information. The minutes of the April 5th Food Security and Climate Disruption Committee are provided. RCMP Municipal Policing Agreement, expenditures to March 31st. Copy of a letter from the Office of the Premier to the Prime Minister advising of a meeting that took place April 19th with ministers, MLAs, mayors, labour leaders and executives from Catalyst Paper regarding the impact of duties by the United States on uncoated groundwood paper. And lastly is Councillor Paulson's report on the AVICC session held regarding legalization of cannabis.
Anybody wish to pull anything out of that? Councillor Paulson?
I don't wish to pull anything, but letter number 8.
Yes.
Would you have any comment on kind of where that's at?
I do, actually. Today, tomorrow, and Wednesday of this week, we have representatives from Natural Resources Canada here in Port Alberni, and they're meeting with 3 groups. Catalyst, of course, meeting with Indigenous leaders, and they're meeting in 2 groups with people representing the manufacturers, remanufacturers using wood fiber. And they're here to talk about federal money that's available to support and help expand the manufacturing industry with, in wood products here in Port Alberni. But they're particularly wanting to talk about programs that the federal government has that can support existing operations as well as future operations. So looking forward to the conversations tomorrow and Wednesday. And they've had a full day already today. So it's quite a team that's come out, and the person that's leading the team, a fellow named Jean-Francois Levasseur, is the person that started the IFIT program 6 years ago. And so to get him here to explain the program and how to access federal funds that will support, this is a really big deal for us. And frankly, it's the Premier's direct letter to the Prime Minister has assisted with this, but we continue as a city to pester the federal government to get resources our way.
Stand up for ourselves.
Stand up for ourselves, yeah. It's important. We want them to know we're here. Anything else, Council? Councillor Sorbet, do you want to move the motion related to this, please?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, that the informational correspondence item through 1 to 9 be received and filed.
Second, Mr. Mayor.
All those in favor? Carried. And Council, no report from in camera. That brings us to Council reports. First one is my report. And even though it's been 3 weeks with between Council meetings, I'll try and keep it really brief. So April 24th, we had the launch of the AV Hospice Society photo op here at City Hall, and I'm sure you saw the photograph and note in the paper. 26th, represented Council at the 40th annual wrestling awards, and Tom McAbey wasn't doing the emceeing for the first time in my experience, but the guy who replaced him spoke just as much as Tom, and it lasted just as long. So it was he has been doing a good job of.
He's being mentored.
He's being mentored, yes. And May the 6th, thank you to Councillor Sobe for organizing helping to organize the Walk for Alzheimer's. It was great weather and a great event. Sorry I had to leave and couldn't participate in the cake, but next time. May the 9th was Wellness Wednesday at the CMHA building on 2nd Avenue, so it was a great event and a good opportunity to see about the various programs that they have and meet some of their clients and members of their board as well. May the 10th, BC Hydro was doing a test alert about the Ash River and Elsie Lake Dam and what should happen if the dam would fail. And I got notified exactly the way it was supposed to, unlike the provincial alert that came the week before, where I didn't receive any notification whatsoever. So
I got mine, so I'm going to live.
You're going to live, okay. Apparently I'm, well. May the 11th, I attended the BC Housing meeting, which was heavily promoted by the city. I was at the ACRD office talking about a number of different projects. Most importantly, there were quite a number of groups represented, so thank you to BC Housing for taking the time and having Executive Director Malcolm McNaughton here to make that presentation. And the 12th, I attended the musical Grease at ADSS. It was their 4th performance in 3 days, and each one was just as packed as the one before. It was virtually impossible to get a seat, so I'm so glad that I bought tickets the day before. It was well done. And May the 13th, I was Mother's Day at McLean's Mill, so it was great food and a lot of fun. It was nice to see all the people out there. And I move acceptance of my report.
Second.
All in favor? Carried. Thank you. And Regional District Report, Councillor McLennan.
Yes, Mr. Mayor. Once again, the Regional District meeting was, the public part particularly, was quite well. A large part of it was taken up with electoral area matters to do with zoning and bylaws and so on, which the city doesn't any longer participate in. We used to participate in that many years ago until we ended up liable for some leaky condos in Defino or something, and so councillors like myself said, we're out of there, but I'm starting to think it might not have been such a good idea because there doesn't seem to be a lot of cohesion between the city and the regional district in the Alberni Valley, so it may be something we can look at. One thing that did come up is their staff has prepared a report, and they're going to be getting an outside group of people to look at their compensation for those that are on the regional district. The last time it happened, they all kind of got a bit of a decrease in effect, so they're kind of looking to see if that can be changed a bit. But there's also the problem that we mentioned last week here, or last meeting, where the government is now, for anyone who is elected to any position, no matter how much the stipend is, large or small, will now have to pay taxes on the expense part as well. So I don't know how that's going to play out, whether people are going to be putting in for local expenses or so on, but they're going to look at that and understand. Well, we passed a motion last meeting to do it, so I presume we'll be looking at it pretty quick as well, because people who are going to be running for election, and a whole lot of people already are, even though you can't get the nomination papers out yet. I understand Facebook is loaded. They should know what it's going to cost, and they should know what problems they will or will not be meeting. And I think it should be made easy enough for people to do that. So anyway, that's my report on the regional district and what they did, and I'll move that report.
All in favor?
And it was an editorial as well, if you didn't notice.
Carried. Thank you. Council, that brings us to councilors' reports, and let's start with Councillor Washington.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just going to touch on some highlights of the Heritage meeting May the 2nd. We had reports from Maritime Heritage Society, Historical Society, ACRD. Just to note that Penny Cote was elected to the executive of the Vancouver Island and Coastal Communities, and just passed. Community Art Council, School District 70. Highlights in museum, May 4th and 5th, the hosting of the regional fair. Over 90 students and 80 volunteers contributing. Grant approval for 2 summer students. Homefront exhibit closed last Friday, and staff is working on the next major temporary show featuring clothing and textiles from our collection to be installed in August. And pretty much that's my report, sir.
Thank you. And Councillor Alberni, even though you're not here in body, do you have anything over the phone?
I do.
Okay.
End of April, I attended a webinar for the smoke and control burning regulation that the Ministry of Environment is putting out, which this council has been pushing for through the ministry. So it does sound like that's coming around, and they gave a lot of detail on what that might look like, although there's still, it sounds like, some finalization happening, but it does look like they will be tightening up the smoke control regulations in the near future. So that's good. I attended the Island Corridor Foundation AGM as council liaison. Again, it was well attended in Nanaimo, and it didn't give a huge amount of new information as far as developments with the province. They're in discussions, although they haven't had any real written correspondence to give concrete direction on kind of where they're going with the railway and with funding from the province. But they're actively working on it, and they're also actively working on a replacement for the CEO position, which is, I believe, from what I've heard, is going to is the interview process pretty soon, I think, for any applicants. So that'll be a good thing to see what happens. I was at the AGM for McLean Mill Society, which we already mentioned, but I wanted to mention as well that I recorded that, so people can see that on my Facebook page if they'd like to see it. We had Air Quality Council meeting last week on Thursday. We mainly discussed the upcoming process for finding out. They're going through a process of finding terms of reference for the council. There are no actual terms of reference for the Air Quality Council as it stands. And actually today, this evening, between 6:30 and 8:30, they were having their first community input session on creating those terms of reference. So hopefully people were able to go out there. It was at Echo Center, and there is another one coming up this week. I believe it's on Thursday, although I'm not entirely sure. I don't have it in front of me right now, but you can go onto the Air Quality Council Facebook page to find out. And the last one is Food Security Climate Disruption Committee meeting we had on Thursday as well. And we just went through some of the outstanding issues from the report, and that's it.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. And Councillor Minions?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just two of my committees that I want to highlight. We had a chamber meeting, and our AGM is coming up on Wednesday, May 23rd at 11:30 a.m. And we are still looking for a few more people to run for chamber election, or the board is, the nominating committee. So anyone who's interested, that's the day to come out and put your name forward. I also had a reconciliation committee meeting, and we are working hard on following up on the information that was collected from our reconciliation forum. So we will be putting out a final report from that night with the help of city staff, which has been very helpful. We'll be putting out a final report on that night very soon. We are just going through all of the information that was collected right now and reviewing and talking about practical next steps. So I will bring that forward as soon as it's available.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Paulson?
I went to the wrestling awards as well, and I just want to make a comment. Alberni won the boys, girls, and overall aggregate scores at the BC Championships this year. And I guess just a comment, I'm so totally amazed that from a population in the Alberni Valley, we continually, year after year, compete against the bigger centers, Vancouver, Prince George, and do so well. So it speaks really well for that program. Attended the Heritage Fair as a judge again, and how much fun is that? Those kids put in so much work from grades 1 to 6, I believe it was. And some of those kids are really, really interesting, and they really do their homework well, and they do a really good job of their projects. And I just really enjoy that particular event. Just a quick comment on air quality. Courtney Comox just finished the report on particulates in the air, and the largest single particulate in their report, wait for it, was dust, plain ordinary dust. So it was a very big surprise to them. I mean, yeah. And just when you think that democracy is happening at its best, I was asked to attend, and I said I would attend a meeting kind of on a fact-finding effort to see if I would want to get involved. When I got there, I found out that I'd been elected or delegated as the protocol director for the cruise ships that are arriving next year. So I want to put in a bit of a word for we're receiving cruise ships in May, June, and July next year. And it is the same ship that will be coming, and they're on their return trip from Alaska, and their destination would be Astoria. And 250 crew, 1,200 passengers. And a lot of people in our community, we're looking for volunteers and obviously people to get involved. And on those days, we want to have celebrations so that they think in Port Alberni we party 365 days of the year, not just when cruise ships come in. But there's a lot of work to be done now for 2019. The offshore or the onshore excursions and stuff have to be finalized here pretty quick. And actually there's a chance for ships to come in 2020, and that planning will start here by the end of June for 2020. So there will be a call out for volunteers and organizations to get involved in those 3 days when those ships arrive. They will drop anchor at 8 a.m. and they will pull up anchor at 5 p.m. So we have them for 9 hours. And we're talking about everything from Cathedral Grove to McLean Mill to agricultural tours, woods tours, and those sorts of things. So, yeah, Ron's been volunteered again. So that's my report, Mr. Mayor.
Couldn't happen to a better guy. Councillor Sauvé.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. On the 24th, I had the privilege to be invited at the ADSS grad exit interview, and it's amazing to me every year the caliber of youngsters that are leaving at graduation, leaving high school. So I had a great day doing that. On the 26th, ACRD office for the air quality mapping project, we had a nice display of the mobile station that's going to be traveling around our valley and doing tests. I did identify key areas for our community for good to be tested, and they're going to take it in consideration, and we should be getting this done probably this summer when it's a crucial time for air quality. On the 27th, AVCSI meeting discussed several initiatives dealing with each organizations with how they're dealing with housing crisis and certain plans and projects that they have going on. And it was a nice welcome to see ACOS coming back to the committee. So thank you for ACOS for coming back. On the 28th, acting mayor for the day or morning, for those who lost their lives at the work site. It was very well attended. A bit of rain, but it didn't stop a lot of people attending, so thank you for those who organized that. On the 30th, attended McLean Mill AGM. I did a welcome little talk on behalf of the mayor, who was busy on other city matters at the time. On the 2nd of May was McHappy Day, so they invited me to attend McDonald's on Johnson Street on behalf of council, and what a hoot, and I am qualified to do that job if everything goes right next election. But I really enjoyed interacting with the staff there, and it's amazing what skills they have going on there and how organized, and it was just a great place. And of course, it's to benefit the Children's Hospital. The 4th of May, Echo Center for the Heritage Fair judging with Councillor Paulson, and it was just an amazing turnout with the kids. On the 5th, busy with fundraising for many organizations in our communities, such as the Alzheimer's at Savon's, Pago Grannies, which I got to learn is Grannies for Grannies in the African nation, and they're raising funds. And it was just, what I've learned there was just amazing, and I thanked all those volunteers who took part of that. Also, there was a fundraiser at the Curling Club that I attended, and also a fundraiser at the aquarium, and they have that nice raffle for that boat, which is a nicer boat this year, so I encourage you all to getting your tickets. On Sunday the 6th was this Alzheimer's Walk for Memories, and thank you again for Mr. Mayor for attending this, and it was well attended. We raised approximately $5,000 locally here, and everything bit helps. On the 8th of May, I had the privilege to represent the city at the Royal BC Museum in Victoria by invitation from the Consulate General of Japan. This was to introduce the honorary Consulate General, Mr. David Bing, who will be a representative for Vancouver Island. And near the end of the night, we got into discussion and explained about our twinning society and what we do in culture exchange and all that. So we got great contacts there and many things to come. And that will be the end of my report before somebody starts falling asleep. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor McClellan.
Okay, just briefly, Mr. Mayor, I also attended the AGM for the McLean Mill and the day of mourning, and unfortunately the turnout wasn't quite as great at the day of mourning as usual, but there were some very large actual funerals at the same time, one that day and one the next. Some of our members had actually died just right then, which makes it tense. Tomorrow I'll be attending the meetings from the Department of Natural Resources on remand and value-added plants, is what I understand. So after tomorrow afternoon, I should know what they want to do. It's something I've been promoting in town for just about as long as I can remember, but I guess I can remember a little bit longer. But it's something that really we had to fight for. We did get it, and then we lost it when companies change hands and so on. So it makes it tense, but small businesses actually do a good job on that. And just two other things, Mr. Mayor. We're getting hot weather now, and I don't know how much longer we're going to be getting it, but that creates a problem for fire. And one thing that starts fires, and we've all seen it in different times, is piles of vegetation just piled up, and it heats up pretty quick, you know, in your compost bin and other places. And just a couple of weeks back, another councillor and I were driving down on the south side of town, and there's two big signs on this empty property that says no dumping. And residents were very diligently carrying all their brambles and grasses and stuff and putting them in a very neat pile on this property. And it's treed, it's grass, and I just maybe don't do that. It's free at the dump. Yes, it's a little drive, but they look after it there, and it won't be starting a fire that the wind blowing from there would go right into their house, quite frankly, because it's that close to the water. And one other thing, at the beginning of tonight's meeting, we had John Maba discussing how healthy it is to ride bikes and stuff. Well, on my way here tonight, Mr. Mayor, I almost hit a cyclist. She was coming out of Elizabeth Street onto Johnson, got to the stop sign and thought, oh, heck with this, I'm going to go on the crosswalk instead of stopping, and got almost in front of me before she thought maybe I should stop. And I wasn't sure I was going to make it. So if you're going to ride a bike and be healthy, stay alive. Go by the rules. We've got some, in my opinion, rather unsafe bike markings on the roads, particularly those chevrons that are right in the middle of where my car drives. And other towns have taken them away. But we don't have that many cyclists, so I haven't really fussed about that. But I just don't like that happening, and I don't want to be the one to nail somebody. So thank you very much. And that concludes my report, and I move that we accept all these wonderful reports from the councillors.
And I'll second that, Mr. Mayor.
All in favor? Councillor Alberni? Carried. Okay, Council, we've new business. I'm seeking retroactive approval. It was because we had three weeks between council meetings, and this invitation came after the previous council meeting. Councillor Sauvé spoke to me about it and asked, and I said, well, let's seek retroactive approval for council for you to attend on behalf of the City of Port Alberni at the reception for the appointment of Mr. David Bing as Honorary Consul General of Japan in Victoria on Tuesday, May the 8th. Is there a seconder?
Second, Mr. Mayor.
All those in favor? Councillor Alberni? Carried. Thank you. And then, Council, we have a notice of motion. I believe it's from Councillor Alberni, a letter concerned to BC Hydro, requesting the city send a letter to BC Hydro expressing concern on the proposed changes to the net metering policy. So that'll be coming forward. This brings us then to question period. It's an opportunity for public and press to ask questions of Mayor and Council. Seeing nobody jumping up, motion to adjourn. Are you jumping up seriously to ask us a question? So this slow motion jump, are you asking us a question before we adjourn? Okay. Yes.
Just a simple question. At the Aquatic Center studies and everything like that, you were saying, I was wondering what facilitating discussions were, like what?
Oh, so it would be an open house for the community to attend and find out and express concerns and find out what the proposal could look like and what their involvement could be and how it would be funded, both in terms of construction and operational costs and so on.
And so there's going to be a report written by Nielsen Welch Consulting?
There would be, but the most important thing is that the members of the entire community in the Alberni Valley would be involved in those discussions.
I see. I think there was one other thing at the end of the meeting. Oh, yeah. I forget who it was, but mentioned iFit program.
Oh, I did. It's a federal program to provide financial support for industry in Canada in terms of the expansion and also exporting.
Okay. Thank you very much, sir.
Okay. Motion to adjourn? All those in favor? Carried. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you, Mr. Burke.